The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before them, an ocean of stars, planets, and black voids, where the destinies of galaxies are written in the silence of the cosmos. This was the galaxy the Xantari ruled, a civilization so ancient that their history was lost in the annals of time. Their ships, sleek and powerful, cruised through the stars with unparalleled grace and precision. No race had dared to challenge their dominance for millennia. The Xantari were not just conquerors, they were hunters. Their weapons were devastating, their strategies flawless, and their soldiers trained for one purpose, annihilation. When the Xantari set their sights on a planet or species, it was only a matter of time before it was wiped from existence. Their culture had evolved through endless wars, and they were now a perfect blend of cold calculation and ruthless efficiency. Fear had become their weapon, and it was enough to make any species tremble in their wake. Across the galaxy, stories of the Xantari's brutality were whispered from one civilization to the next. The Xantari had invaded, enslaved, or obliterated entire star systems without breaking a sweat. Those who had resisted were crushed, their resistance forgotten like dust in the wind. For every species that had fallen before them, there were countless others who had learned to submit without question. But despite their superiority, the Xantari were not immune to the passage of time. Their empire had become stagnant, their enemies beaten, their ambitions fulfilled. There were few challenges left, and most had stopped resisting, resigning themselves to their fate. Until now. In the outskirts of the galaxy, on a distant planet called Earth, something strange had started to happen. Humans, a young and emerging species, had caught the attention of the Xantari, though not in a way they would expect. The human race, though still in its infancy compared to the ancient Xantari, had begun to carve out a place for itself in the universe. Their early attempts at space exploration were crude compared to the wonders of the Xantari, but they were learning fast. Humanity had made its first significant leap into interstellar space, and its ambition showed no signs of slowing. Captain Daniel Graves, a war hero known for his strategic brilliance and unmatched courage, commanded one of humanity's most advanced warships, the USS Vanguard. The Vanguard was an impressive ship, equipped with cutting-edge human technology. While it was no match for the mighty Xantari fleet in terms of size or firepower, it was fast, nimble, and equipped with something the Xantari had never encountered before, cloaking technology. The humans, though still a relatively small power, had begun to show the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. They were clever, resourceful, and determined to make their mark. But for the Xantari, humans were just another primitive species, unworthy of serious consideration. They believed the humans' place in the grand scheme of things was already decided, they would be crushed under the weight of the Xantari Empire, just like all the others before them. Yet, word had begun to spread, among the few who dared to listen, that humanity was different. The rumors were just whispers at first, tales of human survival against overwhelming odds, of small fleets taking down larger, more powerful enemies. The Xantari had paid little attention to these stories. What did it matter? The humans were a fleeting spark in the darkness, destined to burn out before they ever became a threat. But then, something happened. A ship, just a single human warship, had destroyed an entire Xantari fleet. The intelligence reports were clear, the Xantari had been caught completely off guard, their most experienced commanders were defeated, and their ships destroyed, without a single human casualty. The ship had used an unknown technology, cloaking devices, to evade detection and launch precise, devastating strikes. The news sent shockwaves through the Xantari High Command. For the first time in centuries, the Xantari had faced an enemy they could not easily defeat. How had this human ship managed to outsmart them? How had the humans managed to destroy a fleet that was supposed to be invincible? The reports were met with skepticism at first. It had to be a fluke, they thought. Surely, it was just a lucky shot, a stroke of fortune for the humans. The Xantari were not accustomed to being outwitted. Their arrogance and confidence in their power had always served them well. However, General Rock, the Xantari commander responsible for the defense of their borders, did not take these reports lightly. He had always prided himself on his tactical brilliance, and he knew that the human ship's victory could not be entirely dismissed. Rock's advisors were quick to brush it off as an anomaly, but Rock had learned long ago that underestimating an enemy could be fatal. He decided that the only way to understand what had happened was to investigate it firsthand. Without wasting time, he ordered a scout ship to locate the human vessel and observe it closely. The mission was simple: find the ship, analyze its technology, and eliminate any threat. The Xantari were confident that their superior firepower would be more than enough to deal with the humans. But they had failed to see the bigger picture. As the scout ship ventured toward the coordinates of the destroyed fleet, Rock sat in his war room, staring out at the vast stars that stretched before him. He was determined to show the humans their place in the galaxy. Yet, there was a strange feeling gnawing at him, an uneasy sensation that something far more dangerous than he could imagine was lurking in the dark corners of space. The Xantari had never feared anything before, but as the scout ship set out, Rock could not shake the feeling that they were making a mistake. The Xantari fleet was vast and powerful, their weapons capable of wiping out entire planets. They had known no enemy who could stand against them, until now. The human warship that had destroyed the Xantari fleet had been an anomaly, yes, but that was not enough to convince the Xantari High Command to change their perspective on humanity. They still viewed humans as primitive, unpolished creatures who had no real place in the galactic hierarchy. But the truth was, humanity had been underestimated. What the Xantari did not know, what they could not understand, was the strength that lay in humanity's unity. Captain Graves, and the crew aboard the Vanguard, were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of their people. Every soldier, every commander, was willing to sacrifice everything for victory. As the Xantari scout ship neared the human fleet's last known position, they discovered something terrifying: the Vanguard was waiting for them. Cloaked in the void of space, it appeared out of nowhere, its sleek, dark form cutting through the stars like a shadow. It was a terrifying sight, one the Xantari had never seen before. This was no fluke. This was humanity's power, and it was here to stay. The Xantari scout ship tried to flee, but it was too late. In an instant, the Vanguard unleashed its full fury. Cloaked and deadly, the humans had arrived, and they were not going anywhere. The silent expanse of space stretched infinitely before them, vast and uncaring, yet brimming with unseen dangers. The Xantari fleet, a collection of mighty warships, glided through the void, each ship an epitome of raw power and technological superiority. Their mission was simple: find the human warship that had destroyed one of their fleets, learn everything about the mysterious ship, and, if necessary, destroy it. The Xantari had no reason to believe the humans posed any serious threat. Their fleet was enormous, their weapons devastating, and their technology centuries ahead of anything humanity could produce. Yet, in the back of their minds, there was a flicker of doubt, a nagging sense that something was wrong. They had underestimated the humans before, and now, as they approached the coordinates of the destroyed fleet, the uneasy feeling in General Rock's chest only grew. The general watched from his command deck as the fleet advanced. "Prepare for engagement," he ordered his officers. "We will teach these humans that they are not ready for the galaxy. This ends today." But what the Xantari didn't know was that humanity had already set their trap. The USS Vanguard, under the command of Captain Daniel Graves, had been waiting for them. The Vanguard was cloaked in the depths of space, invisible to the Xantari's advanced sensors. Using a combination of stealth technology and the latest human innovations, the Vanguard was the perfect predator in the dark. The Xantari fleet cruised into the designated area, unaware that the human ship was already lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their massive warships scanned the empty void, looking for any sign of life. But all they saw were the stars, the silence, and their own reflection in the void of space. And then, silence shattered. Without warning, the Vanguard dropped its cloak, appearing from nowhere, its sleek, dark form cutting through the stars like a shadow. The Xantari ships had barely any time to react. With surgical precision, the humans launched their first attack. The Vanguard's cannons lit up, firing bolts of energy that slammed into the nearest Xantari vessel, crippling its engines and leaving it drifting helplessly in space. The Xantari were stunned. Their first response was to retaliate, firing their own weapons, but something was wrong. The human ship was faster, more agile than anything they had expected. The Vanguard's AI systems guided it through the firestorm of enemy attacks, outmaneuvering the Xantari with ease. The Xantari's advanced weaponry failed to land a single hit. "Impossible," General Rock muttered under his breath. "These humans, they shouldn't be able to do this." The battle was chaos. Xantari ships, once untouchable, were now being overwhelmed by the precise, calculated strikes of the human ship. The humans had something the Xantari hadn't anticipated: advanced artificial intelligence. The Vanguard's AI was able to predict the Xantari's movements, counteracting their tactics and adapting faster than the Xantari ever could. The battle turned into a fast-paced, high-stakes clash in space. Xantari warships, powerful as they were, found themselves outmatched by the human tactics. The Vanguard's AI guided the ship's weapons with pinpoint accuracy, taking out one Xantari ship after another. As the Xantari tried to regroup, the Vanguard's cloaking device allowed it to phase in and out of visibility, striking again before the Xantari even knew where the next blow would land. In a move that would seal their fate, Captain Graves ordered the next phase of the attack. "Deploy exosuits," he commanded, his voice calm but determined. The crew members quickly boarded the exosuits, robotic exoskeletons designed for extreme combat. These suits, though not as powerful as Xantari armor, were incredibly fast and gave the soldiers enhanced strength, agility, and protection. The humans would not only fight the Xantari from space but would board their ships and take the fight to their very hulls. The Xantari were stunned when human soldiers in exosuits suddenly appeared on their ships. They had never seen such close-quarters combat tactics from an enemy before. The soldiers fought with a brutal efficiency, using their agility and strength to tear through Xantari warriors in hand-to-hand combat. The Xantari, for the first time in their long history, were outclassed. Their technologically superior weapons failed against the speed and unpredictability of human tactics. The human soldiers were relentless. The Xantari, once so confident in their military superiority, were now scrambling, fighting not just a battle, but a war on two fronts. The fight on the ground was just as fierce. On the alien ships, humans and Xantari clashed in brutal, hand-to-hand combat, the sounds of metal clashing and energy weapons firing echoing through the ship's hulls. In the midst of the chaos, there was one moment that would mark a turning point in the battle. Bonner, a young human soldier, had always been known for his courage. He had grown up on Earth, trained in the harshest conditions, and had always believed in the cause. He was dedicated to protecting his fellow soldiers and Captain Graves. But today, his loyalty and bravery would be tested in ways he never expected. As Captain Graves engaged in combat aboard the Xantari flagship, a group of Xantari soldiers ambushed him. Bonner, seeing his commander in danger, charged into the fray without hesitation. With his exosuit, Bonner fought fiercely, taking down Xantari warriors one by one. But in the midst of the battle, a Xantari blade struck him. He fell to the ground, blood seeping through his suit. In his final moments, Bonner looked up at Captain Graves. I did my best, sir," he whispered, his voice strained. Graves knelt beside him, his face a mask of sorrow. "You did more than that," he said quietly. "You saved us all." Bonner's sacrifice would not be forgotten. It was a moment that embodied the human spirit: sacrifice, loyalty, and courage, no matter the cost. As Bonner passed, his death became a rallying cry for the humans, who fought harder than ever, their resolve strengthened by the loss of one of their own. It was not just a fight for survival anymore, it was a fight for each other. Despite their shock and the loss of several ships, the Zantari had not yet surrendered. General Rock, watching the battle unfold from the safety of his flagship, clenched his fists in fury. He had never been humiliated like this before. The humans were no longer just a nuisance, they were a threat. Fall back. Rock barked. We regroup and prepare for a second strike. We will not allow these humans to defy us. But even as Rock gave the order to retreat, the humans continued their relentless assault. The Zantari had never faced an enemy like this before. Their retreat was not out of fear but out of necessity. The vanguard and its soldiers had done the impossible, they had thrown the mighty Zantari back on their heels. Rock's face twisted with anger. This ends now, he muttered to himself. These humans will not escape us again. As the Zantari fleet retreated into the depths of space, nursing their wounds and regrouping, General Rock made a vow. This was only the beginning of humanity's rise. The humans had proven their strength, but Rock knew that their victory had been a fleeting one. The Zantari would return, and when they did, they would crush humanity's spark once and for all. The dark void of space was eerily quiet after the battle, but there was no time to rest. The defeat that the Zantari had suffered at the hands of humanity had shaken them to their core. Never in their long history had they encountered an adversary capable of such unexpected tactics, and they were determined to ensure it never happened again. The retreat was temporary. It was only a matter of time before they returned, and when they did, they would come back with overwhelming force, determined to wipe out humanity for good. In the command chamber aboard the flagship Svardak, General Rock paced back and forth, his mind whirling with thoughts of retaliation. His advisors and commanders gathered around a massive holographic display, showing the locations of the remaining human ships and their movements. The battle had been an embarrassment, but it also revealed something that Rock could not ignore: humanity was no longer the insignificant species he had believed them to be. These humans. They have defeated us, Rock growled, his voice laced with frustration. But they cannot continue to defy the Zantari. He turned to his top commanders, his eyes hardening with resolve. We will annihilate them before they have the chance to strike again. This time, we will use everything at our disposal, no more underestimating them. Humanity will not survive the full force of the Zantari war machine. Rock's words were met with murmurs of agreement from his officers. He knew they were right to be furious. The Zantari's reputation had been tarnished by a force they had once believed to be nothing more than a nuisance. They had to restore their dominance, and fast. The general gave a series of commands to his commanders, and the Zantari fleet began to move into position. The first phase of their plan was to deploy the Marauder-class warships, some of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy, equipped with high-frequency disruptors, plasma cannons, and gravity wells designed to incapacitate enemy ships. These warships were built for destruction, capable of obliterating entire fleets in a matter of minutes. But Rock knew this wasn't enough. He needed to break humanity's spirit, not just their ships. The humans had proven resilient, but if they were going to have any hope of victory, they would need to be destroyed, body and soul. Rock began organizing a new wave of invasion forces, set to descend upon Earth itself. We will crush their will to fight, he declared. We will make an example of them. While the Zantari prepared their retaliatory strike, humanity was not sitting idle. Captain Daniel Graves stood on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, his mind focused on the challenge ahead. He had learned a valuable lesson in the last battle. The Zantari were dangerous, ruthless, and would not hesitate to wipe humanity off the face of the galaxy if given the chance. But they had also learned something else: humanity was not as weak as the Zantari had believed. Graves' gaze shifted to the small crew of his ship, each one of them working tirelessly, preparing for the inevitable. His thoughts were heavy with the memory of Bonner, the young soldier who had sacrificed his life in the battle to save the captain. Bonner's death weighed on him, but it also drove him to push harder, to do whatever it took to ensure humanity's survival. The threat was real, and the stakes had never been higher. "We need to be smarter," Graves muttered to himself as he paced the command deck. "We can't match the Xantari in terms of numbers or firepower, but we can outthink them." Captain Graves was known for his brilliant tactical mind, and he was about to put it to the ultimate test. His fleet, though smaller, was more versatile and technologically advanced. They had Project Ghost, a cloaking device that rendered their ships nearly invisible to the most advanced enemy sensors. The Xantari might have overwhelming firepower, but the humans had the element of surprise, and they intended to use it to its fullest. In addition to Project Ghost, Graves had another weapon in his arsenal, the Sentinel drones. These highly intelligent robots were designed for combat, capable of engaging in everything from reconnaissance missions to full-scale assaults. Equipped with advanced weaponry and artificial intelligence, the drones would play a key role in humanity's defense, providing vital support in battles and skirmishes. Graves turned to his first officer, Commander Nia Lawson, who was overseeing the drone operations. "How's the deployment of the Sentinels coming along?" "We're ready, sir," Nia replied. "The drones are operational and ready for deployment at a moment's notice. They'll give us the edge we need in close combat and reconnaissance." Graves nodded. "Good. We need to hit them hard and fast, strike when they least expect it. Our goal is simple: survive. And in order to survive, we need to hit them first." Graves was determined to make the Xantari regret ever underestimating humanity. But he knew the fight ahead would be long, and they would need every advantage they could get. He spent hours in the war room, finalizing his strategies and making sure his fleet was prepared for the battle of their lives. As the days passed, the tension between the two fleets grew thicker. The Xantari were preparing for their counterattack, and humanity's small fleet was preparing for their desperate defense. Each side knew that the first blow could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The suspense was unbearable. Every ship in humanity's fleet, including the Vanguard, had to be ready to face the might of the Xantari war machine. Captain Graves stared out the viewport of the USS Vanguard, his mind racing as he tried to predict what the Xantari would do next. He had no illusions about the scale of the threat. The Xantari's ships were far superior in raw power. Yet, as he looked at his crew, he knew they would not go down without a fight. They would use their wits, their bravery, and their technology to stand their ground. And then, it came. The Xantari launched their assault with terrifying speed. The massive Marauder-class warships arrived in the galaxy's orbit, their weapons ready to unleash devastation on humanity's fleet. The humans had only moments to prepare as the Xantari advanced, their massive ships blotting out the stars. Captain Graves gave the order to engage. "Initiate Project Ghost," he commanded. The Vanguard and the other human ships vanished from sight, cloaked by the advanced technology they had been perfecting for months. The Xantari ships scanned the area, their sensors working overtime to detect the elusive human vessels. But the humans were already positioning themselves for the first strike. The Xantari commanders were confident in their victory, but they were unaware of the guerrilla-style tactics the humans had perfected. The first wave of human ships emerged from the cloak, attacking with pinpoint precision. The Xantari warships, unable to track the movements of their invisible enemies, were blindsided. "We've got them on the ropes, Captain," Nia said excitedly. But the Xantari were not easy prey. They adapted quickly, countering with new countermeasures designed to break through the cloaking technology. What followed was a tense, fast-paced battle, humans engaging in hit-and-run tactics, skirmishing with the Xantari wherever possible, while the larger ships of the Xantari loomed ominously in the background, waiting for the right moment to strike. The suspense built as the battle raged. Each move from the Xantari seemed to predict the next move of the humans, while Captain Graves and his team fought desperately to keep their fleet one step ahead. The vastness of space was suddenly torn apart by the roar of weapons. A battle was brewing, one that would decide the fate of humanity. The Xantari, having suffered their first humiliating defeat at the hands of the humans, were back, determined to annihilate their enemies once and for all. And this time, they brought everything they had. The Xantari fleet, massive and menacing, moved in perfect formation, their ships looming like shadows over the outer colonies of Earth. The humans knew this day would come, and they had prepared for it. Captain Daniel Graves stood at the helm of the USS Vanguard, his eyes narrowing as the first wave of Xantari warships entered Earth's orbit. He could feel the weight of the moment, the tension in the air thick with the knowledge that this battle would be humanity's greatest test. "All ships, cloak and engage on my mark," Graves commanded, his voice calm but firm. His crew, prepared and resolute, reacted instantly. The human fleet, small in comparison to the vast armada of the Xantari, relied on their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. The Xantari's massive ships, while powerful, were slow, their sensors designed for detection at long distances. The humans, on the other hand, had the advantage of speed and surprise. For the first few moments, the humans struck with precision. The Xantari had no idea where the attacks were coming from. Cloaked ships moved in and out of the shadows, launching surprise strikes at the slower, less agile warships of the Xantari. Each explosion that lit up the dark expanse of space sent shockwaves through the Xantari fleet, but the humans knew they could not keep this up forever. Amid the chaos, Graves' mission was clear. The Sentinel drones, humanity's next big innovation, would be deployed to infiltrate the Xantari mothership, the heart of their fleet. The drones, equipped with advanced combat capabilities and AI-driven strategies, would breach the mothership's defenses, giving humanity their chance to strike the decisive blow. As the drones zoomed through space, Graves and his elite team prepared for their own mission. They would board the Xantari mothership directly. The plan was risky, dangerous even, but it was humanity's best shot. Their goal was simple: disable the mothership's power core and prevent the Xantari from unleashing their full might on Earth. "Prepare for boarding," Graves ordered. His voice was steady, but there was no hiding the tension beneath it. The success of this mission could tip the scales of the entire battle. The battle was escalating, and the losses were mounting. The Xantari were relentless, pressing forward with their overwhelming numbers. As Graves and his team infiltrated the mothership, they encountered fierce resistance. The corridors of the Xantari vessel were dark, cold, and filled with the hum of alien machinery. The sound of gunfire and explosions echoed as human soldiers fought their way deeper into the heart of the enemy ship. Among Graves' team was Bonner, the young soldier who had shown incredible bravery in the previous battle. He had proven himself to be one of the most dedicated and loyal men Graves had ever known. But the horrors of war had claimed him far too soon. As Graves and Bonner pushed through an enemy blockade, they encountered a squadron of Xantari warriors. Bonner fought valiantly, taking down several of the alien soldiers with impressive skill. But in the chaos of the battle, an explosion sent him flying backward, fatally injured. Graves rushed to his side, but it was too late. Bonner's last breath came in a soft gasp. "Captain," Bonner whispered, a smile on his face despite the blood that stained his uniform. "You'll win. For Earth. For all of us." Graves felt his heart twist as he looked down at the brave soldier who had sacrificed everything. The loss of Bonner was a heavy blow, but it only fueled Graves' resolve. He stood up, wiping his face of the grief, and turned to his team. "This is for Bonner. We finish this. For Earth. For humanity," Graves said, his voice filled with quiet but unshakable determination. The death of Bonner was not just a personal loss, it was a symbol of the strength and sacrifice that defined humanity. His sacrifice gave the crew the emotional drive they needed to push forward, to fight against impossible odds. As they made their way deeper into the Xantari mothership, the weight of Bonner's death hung heavily on each of them. Graves and his team reached the control room of the Xantari mothership, where they encountered the last line of defense. The room was filled with Xantari soldiers, all armed and ready to prevent the humans from reaching their goal. The humans were outnumbered, but they fought with everything they had. The Sentinel drones had already infiltrated key areas of the mothership, disabling several power systems, but the final blow would come from within. The battle inside the mothership was brutal. Graves' team moved through the corridors with precision, using the same guerrilla tactics that had served them well in earlier fights. Despite their small numbers, they fought like a coordinated unit, taking down one enemy after another. Finally, they reached the main power core, and with a final push, they planted explosives on the ship's critical systems. But just as they were about to set the charges, an alarm blared through the ship. General Rock, the Zantari commander, had unleashed a devastating counterattack. He had activated the mothership's last line of defense, the Dark Pulse Cannon, a weapon capable of unleashing enough energy to wipe out entire fleets. The moment of triumph turned into one of terror. The Dark Pulse Cannon powered up, and the humans knew that they had only minutes, if not seconds, to finish their mission before it was too late. "We have to move. Now!" Graves shouted as the countdown to destruction began. As the clock ticked down, the human team faced overwhelming odds. With the Zantari still closing in, they set the final charges and detonated the core. The explosion shook the entire mothership, sending shockwaves through space. The Vanguard and the other human ships watched from a distance as the Zantari mothership exploded into a ball of fire and debris. But even as the mothership's destruction seemed certain, General Rock's fury was not yet spent. He activated a devastating counterattack, deploying a swarm of new, heavily armed ships aimed at crushing the human fleet once and for all. As the Zantari forces regrouped for a final, decisive blow, Captain Graves knew that the battle for survival was far from over. But humanity had shown what they were capable of. They had fought against the might of the Zantari, taken down their most powerful ship, and survived against impossible odds. The final clash was about to begin, and Graves was ready to lead his team into it. For Bonner. For Earth. And for the future of humanity, the battle for humanity's survival had reached its most critical point. After days of intense fighting, Captain Daniel Graves and his remaining forces prepared to take the final step, an all-out counteroffensive against the powerful Zantari fleet. The odds were overwhelming, but humanity had already shown that it would not go down without a fight. This would be their moment. It was time to prove that even the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy could not crush the unyielding spirit of mankind. The scene was set, humanity's fate hung in the balance. Captain Graves stood before his team, his expression hardened but resolute. His eyes scanned the tactical map of the Zantari fleet, their flagship looming in the distance. The Zantari had already launched several retaliatory strikes against Earth's outer colonies, but they had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt and fight back. "We've been backed into a corner," Graves said, his voice low and filled with determination. "But we're not giving up. We're going to hit them where it hurts. The Zantari think they've won. They think we're weak. Let's show them what humanity can do." With that, the order was given. The remaining human ships, battered but unbroken, launched their surprise attack. Graves had devised a plan that relied on a combination of cunning and brute force. They would infiltrate the Zantari flagship and launch a direct assault, while Earth's space stations provided orbital bombardment to weaken the enemy's fleet. As humanity's ships closed in, the space stations began firing. Massive beams of energy erupted from Earth's defensive platforms, striking the Zantari warships with incredible force. The Zantari fleet, still reeling from their previous defeats, struggled to respond as explosions erupted across their formation. The humans' coordinated attacks were precise, and the destruction was massive. The sky above the battlefield seemed to glow as explosions lit up the dark expanse of space. The once mighty Zantari fleet, so sure of their victory, was now fighting for survival. Graves and his team, undeterred by the odds, pressed forward. Their final objective, the Zantari flagship, the heart of the enemy fleet. The humans closed in on the Zantari flagship, its massive form towering above them like a dark, foreboding shadow. The time for strategy was over, now, it was time for raw action. Graves and his team prepared to board the enemy ship. Their mission was simple: to take control of the flagship and disable its weapons, all while fighting through Xantari soldiers who were ready to defend their ship at any cost. As the human soldiers stormed the Xantari ship, they were met with fierce resistance. The Xantari elite soldiers, tall, armored, and formidable, rushed to stop the invaders. The humans, armed with advanced exosuits and specialized combat gear, were ready for the challenge. The two forces clashed in a brutal, no-holds-barred fight. Every move was calculated, every strike deadly. The humans used their superior agility and adaptability to counter the Xantari's raw strength. The battle was chaotic, with soldiers tumbling through narrow hallways, exchanging blows in close-quarters combat. Captain Graves, leading from the front, fought alongside his team, taking down Xantari warriors with a combination of precision strikes and well-timed counterattacks. His soldiers, though vastly outnumbered, fought with a fierce determination that came from years of defending Earth against impossible odds. Graves' team breached the ship's central hub, a vast control room where the Xantari's command center was located. It was here that the humans would face the Xantari's final line of defense, General Rock, the alien commander responsible for the campaign against Earth. In the heart of the flagship, the humans found themselves locked in a desperate struggle. Xantari soldiers were everywhere, blocking their path and fighting to the death to protect their mothership. But despite the overwhelming odds, the humans held their ground. The tide was turning in their favor. Humanity's adaptability and resourcefulness were proving to be the Xantari's downfall. The fight was personal now. The soldiers, weary but resolute, knew they had already lost so much. They had lost comrades, their homes, and their security. But they had not lost their will to fight. The memory of their fallen friends, like Bonner, who had given his life in the previous battle, pushed them forward. His sacrifice was not in vain. Graves, covered in sweat and grime from the intensity of the battle, paused for a moment to look out over his team. They had come so far, and now they were at the heart of the enemy's war machine. He addressed his team with a speech, his voice thick with emotion. "This is it, team. We've fought long and hard for this moment. We've lost so many, but we're still standing. Our families, our friends, they're all counting on us. But it's not just about revenge. It's about showing the galaxy who we are. Humanity is not to be underestimated. We fight for each other. We fight for Earth. And we'll make sure that the cost of victory is worth it." His words were met with determined nods and shouts of encouragement. The humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of their species. And with every step they took through the halls of the Xantari mothership, their resolve only grew stronger. The battle raged on as they reached the control room. General Rock stood at the helm, his alien form towering over the humans. His eyes burned with fury as he saw the intruders. He knew that the loss of the flagship would be catastrophic, but he was determined not to let it fall. Rock raised his weapon, his voice booming as he challenged Graves. "You are nothing but ants in the face of the Xantari. You will fall before us, just like the others before you." Graves stood tall, his voice filled with calm certainty. "We're not ants. And you're not the first to underestimate us. But you'll be the last." With that, the final battle began. It was a fight not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. Every strike, every movement, carried the weight of their entire species. The humans were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for the right to exist. The battle was fierce, with Xantari warriors attacking from every direction. Graves and his team fought their way through the heart of the flagship, finally confronting General Rock in a final, intense showdown. Rock, with his superior strength and advanced weaponry, was a formidable opponent. But the humans were not deterred. Graves, using every bit of training and strategy he had learned over the years, fought with everything he had. The Xantari general struck hard, but Graves was quick, dodging and countering every blow. The clash between the two was a blur of movement, energy, and violence. With a final, desperate move, Graves disarmed General Rock, knocking him to the ground. Rock's eyes burned with hatred as he struggled to get back up, but it was too late. The humans had won. The flagship, now under their control, was theirs. "Victory is ours," Graves said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. The battle had been long, and the price had been high, but humanity had triumphed. As the flagship systems began to stabilize, Captain Graves took a moment to reflect on the cost of this victory. The death of so many brave soldiers weighed heavily on his heart. But he knew they had not fought in vain. Their sacrifice had ensured that humanity would survive, that Earth would remain free from the clutches of the Xantari. The final battle had ended, but the war was far from over. The Xantari had been dealt a heavy blow, but they were not defeated yet. Graves knew that humanity's fight for survival would continue, but for the first time, they had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. And with that, Captain Graves turned to his team, his face resolute. "We've won today. But tomorrow, the fight continues. We're not done yet." The battle had been long and hard, but humanity had emerged victorious. The Xantari fleet, once a powerful force threatening to annihilate Earth, had been decimated. The massive flagship that had been the heart of the invasion was now under human control, and General Rock, the ruthless leader of the Xantari forces, was captured. The tide of war had shifted, and the balance of power in the galaxy had forever changed. As the dust settled from the final battle, Captain Daniel Graves stood on the command deck of the human flagship, looking out at the stars. The view was peaceful now, a stark contrast to the chaos and destruction that had dominated the battlefield only hours before. The victory had been hard-won, but it was a victory nonetheless. The Xantari had been dealt a crushing blow, and their once proud fleet was no more. Graves knew that this was more than just a military victory, it was a turning point for humanity. Earth's leaders had shown that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had proven that they were capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most advanced and feared species. The galaxy, once indifferent or dismissive of humans, was now watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The impact of humanity's victory was immediate. As word spread of the defeat of the Xantari, other alien species, many of whom had been under the oppressive thumb of the Xantari Empire, began to approach Earth, seeking alliances and protection. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. No longer were the humans the underdogs. They were now a force to be reckoned with. "Graves, the diplomatic channels are lighting up," a voice came through his communicator. It was Lieutenant Harris, his second-in-command. "Aliens from several sectors are requesting talks. They want to join forces with us. They want our protection." Graves' face softened with a mix of disbelief and pride. Humanity's influence was beginning to grow, and Earth's leaders were now in a position of power. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about shaping the future of the galaxy. "We'll need to take it one step at a time," Graves replied, his voice steady. "We'll need to be careful. We can't trust everyone, but we can build alliances where they count." The Xantari had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, but their defeat had created a ripple effect that would change the course of history. Earth's position in the galaxy had been cemented, and the potential for cooperation, as well as conflict, was vast. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was no longer the underdog. They were players in a much larger game. Later that evening, Graves found himself standing alone on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. The galaxy stretched out before him, beautiful and vast. But even amidst the beauty of space, the memory of the battle weighed heavily on his heart. So many lives had been lost. So many had given everything to ensure humanity's survival. He thought of his team, Bonner, Harris, and the others, who had sacrificed so much. They were the reason humanity had made it this far. Their courage, their resilience, had allowed them to hold their ground against the Xantari, against all odds. As the stars twinkled above, Graves thought of what lay ahead. The victory over the Xantari was significant, but it was only the beginning. Humanity had proven that they could stand up to the most powerful forces in the galaxy, but there would be more battles ahead. The Xantari had been just one threat, and there were others lurking in the shadows. But for now, Graves allowed himself a moment of peace. He had seen firsthand the strength of humanity's will to survive. He had witnessed their ability to adapt and overcome, no matter the cost. This was not just a victory for Earth. It was a victory for all of humanity. They had not just survived, they had conquered. The future was uncertain, but humanity's place in it was no longer in doubt. Days passed, and the celebrations of humanity's hard-won victory began to fade. Graves, though, had little time for celebrations. The war had taken its toll, and the survivors needed time to recover. Humanity's victory had come at a great cost, and Graves knew that it was important to honor the fallen. He visited the memorial built in honor of Bonner and the other soldiers who had given their lives in the fight against the Xantari. The names of the fallen were etched into the marble, a permanent reminder of their sacrifice. Graves stood before the memorial, his hand resting on the cold stone. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering Bonner's brave sacrifice. The memory of his friend, his comrade in arms, filled him with a deep sense of gratitude and sorrow. Bonner had fought to the end, believing in the cause, believing in humanity's ability to overcome any challenge. "We did it, Bonner," Graves whispered to the wind, as if his friend might still be able to hear. "We won. And we'll make sure no one forgets your sacrifice. You gave everything, and we won't let it be in vain." A breeze stirred, rustling the leaves of the trees that surrounded the memorial. Graves stood there for a while longer, lost in thought. He thought of all the soldiers who had fallen. Their faces, their voices, their hopes and dreams, all gone. But their legacy would live on. Their sacrifice had changed the galaxy. And for that, they would be remembered forever. As he turned to leave, Graves couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. Humanity had fought for its place in the galaxy, and it had secured it. They were no longer at the mercy of the galaxy's most powerful empires. They were no longer the underdogs. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And for the first time, humanity could look forward to that future with hope. Humanity had emerged victorious against the Xantari, but their story was far from over. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with unknown challenges and threats. But Earth had proven that it would not be easily defeated. Captain Graves, his team, and the rest of humanity stood at the dawn of a new era, an era where they would not just survive, but thrive. The road ahead would be difficult, but humanity had already shown that they were more than capable of overcoming anything the galaxy could throw at them. And as Graves looked out at the stars one last time, he knew that humanity's journey had only just begun. The galaxy was waiting, and they were ready.